Hello and welcome. My name is Ryan Scheiding. I am an incoming assistant professor of digital media at the Georgia Institute of Technology. And today I'm making a short video version of my International Conference on Games and Narrative 2023 talk entitled This Extremely Japanese-Styled Title, Fatal Frame, Folklore, and the Narrative Construction of Japanese-ness. This video is based on the Fatal Frame series, which has run from 2001 to present. The series, which is developed and published by Koei Tecmo, consists of 5 mainline games, 1 spin-off title, and 3 remakes or remasters. This horror series challenges players to defeat hostile ghosts in survival horror-styled gameplay with a special camera called the Camera Obscura as they navigate haunted environments and try to solve the mysteries behind the hauntings. The games have not always been released worldwide, but 2 remakes have been recently released. These are Fatal Frame Maiden of Black Water in 2021 and Fatal Frame Mask of the Lunar Eclipse in 2023, both of which were specifically designed to be re-released worldwide. The run-up to the 2023 release of Fatal Frame Mask of the Lunar Eclipse led me to a quote by Fukiya Yutaka, the producer of the game, that was used in a YouTube marketing video that inspired me in this project. He said, "Thanks to all the Japanese fans who have supported this game for so long, and to the overseas fans who have embraced this extremely Japanese-styled title, we have been able to continue the series this far." This specific quote led me to a question. How is Japanese-ness defined by Koei Tecmo through Fatal Frame? To explore this, I compare Fatal Frame to historical depictions of yurei, contemporary depictions in media that have been exported outside of Japan and feature these yurei. However, before we begin, I want to take a moment to note that Koei Tecmo is, of course, a Japanese company based in Yokohama, and the developers of the series are primarily Japanese people. This study reaches beyond these facts so as to not essentialize the series as inherently Japanese simply because of the location of its development and the demographics of its developers. While Japanese games of course provide a window into Japanese culture, they do not by their mere existence put forth a definition of Japan or Japanese-ness. The first place we can look to see how Koei Tecmo defines Japanese-ness through Fatal Frame is historical media that represent yurei. It should be noted that yurei can be generally understood as Japanese ghosts, but there's a debate as to how they are defined. Sometimes they're considered as a subclass of the larger term yokai, and other times they're not. For the purposes of this video, we will use yurei to mean Japanese ghosts with the understanding that this is not a perfect cultural translation. Yurei have a rich history in Japanese media and have appeared in numerous mediums throughout history. Ghost stories have deep roots in Japan, with notable examples including the popular female ghosts Oiwa and Okiku. Lafcadio Hearn, a Western writer, famously collected these stories and others into his work ICGaN in the early 20th century, which helped to popularize them abroad. Satoko Shimazaki has written extensively on how the female ghost was depicted and formulated in kabuki theater during the Edo period. An important aspect of their character was that female ghosts sought vengeance against those in the living world. This fell outside of traditional roles that women played in kabuki theater and gender expectations of Edo-Japanese society in general. Yurei were also subject of ukiyo-e woodblock art. The sample on the right depicts Okiku as her ghost appears in the well that she was drowned in. Finally, yurei also appeared in the art of the famed artist Toriyama Seikian in the 18th century. Yurei received their own listing in his yokai encyclopedias, which were illustrated with this art. These media depict ghosts with many of the same visual elements that we still see today. Also, the ghosts act in similar ways to ghosts found in Fatal Frame, including seeking vengeance and having a connection to the living world. Utilizing these visual and narrative similarities are one way that Koei Tecmo connects Fatal Frame to a centuries-long tradition of Japanese yurei in media. The depictions of yurei in Fatal Frame are only one example of many yurei depictions in contemporary media. Yurei media has become quite popular outside of Japan and is frequently exported or localized to regions outside of the country. I'm sure that many, if not all of you, can think of an example of media featuring yurei, and some of you probably even have a favorite yurei. One of the most prominent examples of this would be Sadako from the Ring Media franchise. However, there are numerous other examples, such as the manga of Mizuki Shigeru and Ito Junji, for example. A personal favorite of mine is Matsuda Aoko's collection of short stories Where the Wild Ladies Are, which are modernized feminist retellings of classic ghost stories, including that of Okiku. Once again, we can see some similarity and influence between these works and the Fatal Frame series. One particular visual example would be the long dark hair of the female ghosts, as seen in the illustration on the right of this slide, which has become ubiquitous in Yurei media. As we will see, adhering to expectations helps to position Fatal Frame alongside contemporary Yurei media designed, at least partially, to be consumed in the West, while also maintaining connections to Japanese media. From these depictions, both historical and contemporary, we can see that there is an established visual and narrative canon of Yurei. We can ask, how does Fatal Frame mobilize this canon, and how does this contribute to the series' representation of Japanese-ness? A large part of the series' Japanese-ness comes from its settings and characters, which are almost exclusively Japanese. All of the games in the series are set in different Japanese locales in the 1980s before the ubiquity of cell phones, so as to isolate the player and characters. Specific locations include a haunted estate, an isolated village in a forest, and a cursed mountain. Though some Western-style buildings can be found, the locations typically feature Japanese architecture, such as torii gates or traditional Japanese houses. The protagonists of the games, which shift with each new iteration, are exclusively Japanese. Examples include Ruka Minazuki from Fatal Frame Mask of the Lunar Eclipse, Yuri Kozukata from Fatal Frame Maiden of Black Water, and Rei Kurosawa from Fatal Frame 3. These distinctly Japanese settings and characters make it so that, even after localization, the games are still grounded in Japan. However, it's through the ghosts of this series that we see the deeper connections to a sense of Japanese-ness in the Fatal Frame series. Quite notably, the majority of the final boss ghosts in the series are women. These ghosts are narratively the most important because their deaths and want of vengeance in the afterlife are central to the plots of the Fatal Frame games. There is an intriguing connection between these Fatal Frame ghosts and the vengeful female ghost described by Shimazaki in her study of Edo-era kabuki theater. Coupled with the visual depictions from the games, the ghosts of Fatal Frame have connections to century-long representations of Yurei. We can also look to the general narrative and gameplay flow of the Fatal Frame games to seek deeper connections to Japanese Yurei culture. Generally, I would categorize the narrative flow in Fatal Frame games as follows. A failed ritual before the story of the game starts leads to the creation of a vengeful or regretful ghost. The main protagonist visits the haunted area. They are attacked by hostile ghosts. They fight and explore to uncover the mystery behind the hauntings, and eventually a ritual is attempted to set the ghost to rest. This general narrative structure connects to traditional Yurei storytelling, especially the connection of the ghost to the living world, whether that be because of regret or a quest for vengeance against the living world. We can also look to the existence of a parallel spirit world or the use of rituals to appease the dead as being connected to Japanese religions, such as Shinto and Buddhism. It is quite evident that the Fatal Frame series capitalizes on pre-existing depictions of Yurei in its quest to establish, as Yutaka phrases it, Japanese style. Fatal Frame capitalizes on traditional depictions of Yurei, which we can say grounds the series in ideas of the historical. The series also adheres to contemporary depictions of Yurei, which we can say grounds the series in ideas of the authentic. In this I mean that it adheres to expectations of an audience. This use of the historical and the authentic grounds the Fatal Frame games both in the centuries-long tradition of Yurei in Japanese media cultures, but also in contemporary transcultural trade of Japanese horror. This is how Koei Tecmo creates their distinct version of Japanese-ness. Or in other words, this is how Koei Tecmo defines Japanese style. While these connections exist, it is valuable and necessary to question what they tell us about conceptions of Japanese-ness and the marketing of that term. Importantly, we need to question monolithic views of culture, who is included and excluded in these views of culture, or even if any of this is distinctly, quote, Japanese. Regardless, we can say that Fatal Frame provides an interesting glance into how a Japanese company and Japanese developers design, define, depict, and represent Japanese-ness, especially when they have non-Japanese audiences in mind. I'd like to thank you for your time and attention today. If you'd like to find my other work or contact me with questions, you can find me on these platforms. If you're interested in Yurei, Fatal Frame, or Japanese games, check out these references here for further reading. Thank you.